Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which are both free to download, both free to use, and both sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And as always, love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text into the show. Producer Ray Dominguez standing by, eagerly awaiting your correspondence. So a lot of directions to go. Let's start this way. You have to say, in the end, it worked out for the Denver Nuggets. They get the 3 seed while resting guys the last 2 games. But if we're dishing out credit, certainly the players that did play for the Denver Nuggets deserve credit. But really, the Spurs deserve the lion's share of the credit here, don't they? This is take what happened 2 years ago to the Denver Nuggets and flip it. This is exactly what happened. Let me remind you what the Nuggets happened to them 2 years ago. So they had something to play for, which was the 1 seed. Michael Malone wanted to play his players, his best players, in, coincidentally, a game in San Antonio to close out the season, because they wanted to get that thing, that top seed. Spurs didn't very much care about the result, or at least the lineup they put out would give the indication they cared far less about the result of the game. But somehow the Denver Nuggets blew it. They lost the game, and the result of it is that they ended up playing the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 2. And you remember how that series went. It did not go well for the Denver Nuggets. This is flip this. Because one thing I keep hearing, and I bristle when I hear this, because it's not true. Don't tell me that San Antonio didn't care about that game. The Nuggets played fewer guys on Sunday than San Antonio did. San Antonio didn't play Wemby. They didn't play that guy who has a legitimate rib injury. Sitting out Wemby is the same as the Nuggets sitting out Aaron Gordon. Like, real injury concerns here. Let's not push it. Let's err on the side of caution. I watched that game. De'Aaron Fox played 30 minutes. Steph Castle played 30 minutes. Devin Vassell played 30 minutes. The only guy who didn't play for San Antonio was Wemby. The Nuggets didn't play Gordon, didn't play Brown, didn't play Johnson, didn't play Gordon. Who am I missing? They didn't play 4 of their 5 starters, and the only reason they played Nikola Jokic was to get him the 65 games or avoid a fine. More on that momentarily. But the Spurs were trying to win that game. Why? Could be, young team. They haven't really earned the right to take nights off. That could be part of Mitch Johnson's thinking. Or could it have been because they wanted the Nuggets on the same side of the bracket as Oklahoma City? The Spurs personnel, at the very least, I can't totally speak to the mindset of the San Antonio Spurs, but one thing I can tell you is that team that was out there on Sunday for San Antonio should have beaten the David Roddy, Julian Strawther-led Denver Nuggets. And I know Jokic played in the first half, but for the majority of that game, it was Roddy and Julian Strawther, and they were killing them. A 22-0 run was given up by the San Antonio Spurs, who are playing all of their best players except for Victor Wembanyama. So San Antonio blew it. They absolutely should have won that game, which would have put the Nuggets in the 4 seed, which would have made their second round opponent Oklahoma City. But let's zoom out a little bit. And one last thing on San Antonio, this will come back to bite them. Just like it burned the Denver Nuggets when they blew that game 2 years ago in San Antonio, it came back to bite them. Not in the first round, they took care of the Lakers. Spurs are going to be fine in round 1. It's round 2 that Spurs fans are going to be like, man, we should have won that game and we would have allowed OKC and Denver to play each other, and we would have been just chilling, waiting in the conference finals for the winner of a knockdown, drag-out fight for 7 games. So the Spurs are going to rue what happened on Sunday a little bit, for sure. But back to the Nuggets. Zoom out a little bit. David Adelman should be thankful because the way he handled this, there was a decent chance the Nuggets could have ended up in the 5 seed. Now, after they beat Oklahoma City, then it was just the 4, but they could have ended up in the 4 seed as well, which would have been detrimental in a way that I will explain momentarily. But my issue, first of all, if you're dead set on playing Nikola Jokic, because of the 65-game rule, if that was the reason, and David Adelman intimated that it was, why aren't you playing him in front of your home fans on Fan Appreciation Night? That doesn't show a lot of appreciation to me. If you're dead set on playing him, why are you choosing to play him on the road instead of in front of your home fans? That was my big problem on Friday. And you saw what happened. Jim Rome was just talking about it before I came on here. What was a third of the league sat players? A third of the players in the league sat this weekend or on Sunday or whatever it might be. Load management. If you're going to load manage guys, I just feel like maybe you should give a thought to your dedicated fan base that is paying a consequential amount of money to go to this last regular season game, and Nikola Jokic doesn't play, and Jamal Murray doesn't play, and Aaron Gordon doesn't play. So that was my bigger issue here. So I don't love that David Adelman handled it the way he did for that reason. But there was also consequence to his actions potentially. Do you know that in the last 30 years of the NBA, not one team has been seated lower than 3rd and won a title? Not one in 30 years. And there's a lot of different reasons to it. Right? The lack of home court throughout the postseason is probably the biggest reason why. But it's also a more difficult path through the postseason. And there can be a bunch of other tiny reasons along with it, but the facts are the facts. History is history. Last 30 years, no one with a 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 next to their name on the bracket has gone on to win an NBA title. So David Adelman can be confident in the Denver Nuggets, and that's great. But should he be that this team is capable of bucking 30 years of organized basketball history? You could be confident in the Denver Nuggets as the 3 seed, maybe winning a title. Going into that Thunder game, the potential was there for the Nuggets to be the 5. And then any hope for the Denver Nuggets would probably be mostly out the window. And at the very least, you don't want to take that chance. Right? At the very least, why even risk it? When you have it within your control, which David Adelman did, to earn the 3 seed, why would you leave it to chance that you didn't? And trusting that group of players, with all due respect to the Julian Strathers and David Roddy's of the world, you're taking a chance. You're taking that risk. But again, credit to them. They played some of the best basketball we've seen from those players. And here's the thing. It's great to say that you're not ducking anybody. And David Adelman said that after the game. Like, I get it. You're not ducking anybody. You're not afraid or trembling in your boots. This is about pragmatism. This is about being scared. This is about pragmatism. The Avalanche, just right across the hall, wanted the top seed. In part, in addition to all the home ice advantage they would enjoy, in part to not have to deal with this stupid contrived thing that the NHL has where division teams within the same division play each other in the first round, even if, like Dallas and Minnesota, are the second and third best teams in the entire league. Or I guess not on points, but they're certainly second and third in the West, and they're matching up in the first round. The Avalanche wanted to avoid that. Not because they're scared of Dallas. They're going to have to go through Dallas probably anyway. But if you can avoid something like that, why don't you? I'm not saying risk life and limb, but that's not what the Denver Nuggets were doing. The Denver Nuggets were like, we're not playing anybody. And the Avalanche wanted to avoid that 2-3 matchup. And they, I think, should be more confident going into these playoffs than the Nuggets are. To the victor go the spoils. You get in the NBA, because they don't have that stupid contrived thing that the NHL has, you get the 3 seed, you get San Antonio round 2 against OKC, a better matchup. Not that you're scared of OKC. You're going to have to go through them, but you have a better matchup in round 2. And nobody's happier today than OKC. OKC are the defending champions. You don't think that they're pleased about the way the bracket has set up? And they're certainly not afraid of anybody. It's about being pragmatic, giving yourself the best path through the postseason that you can. And now OKC probably takes about 10 games to get through to the Western Conference Final, and they get to sit back on their recliner and watch San Antonio and Denver duke it out for 7 games. Now, it does feel like the more difficult of the 2 matchups, Minnesota and Houston, right? It feels like it because of the history, because of what Minnesota did to Denver 2 years ago. I will remind you that the Denver Nuggets had as much success this year against Minnesota as they did Houston. And I will remind you, too, that these teams finished in a particular order over the course of 82 games, which should signify that one team has been better this year than the other. And that would be Houston. From beginning to end over the course of the 82-game marathon, Houston proved out to be a better team than Minnesota. And again, the Nuggets did just as well against Minnesota as they did Houston this year. So I get the history and I understand the matchup part of it, but if we're just taking, quality of teams into account here, the Nuggets have the better path than they would have if they would have ended up in the 4-5 matchup and then matching up with OKC in round 2. Pragmatism. Not ducking anybody, not being scared. This is what you play for over the course of the year. And to me, even if you want to say that Minnesota is a more difficult matchup, I think the benefit of playing San Antonio in round 2 as opposed to OKC is greater than the difference between how good Minnesota is and how good Houston is, or how bad of a matchup Minnesota is compared to Houston in the first round. I would expect if the Denver Nuggets can't get through the first round, I don't care who they play, then they're not the team that we've been making them out to be. Anyway. Maybe what this was David Adelman seeing what happened 2 years ago. And he's like, I'm going to prioritize health over everything. But as I say that, I go, you played Nikola Jokic. So it's not health over everything. Even you were inconsistent in your mindset going into these last 2 games because you played your best player, your most important player, for almost the entirety of the first half on Sunday. So it's not health over everything, but it's mostly health over everything. So either Nikola Jokic being eligible for postseason awards, or the fact that you would have been fined by the NBA for sitting both Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic on a nationally televised game, which I kind of think is probably more of the reason. That was prioritized above health. To me, this strategy was equally as short-sighted as what Michael Malone had 2 years ago. For different reasons, but still very short-sighted. If it's about health and it's about maintaining this team, why did everybody play all these NBA league-leading back-to-backs? Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic were available for every back-to-back. He played Aaron Gordon a back-to-back. And then he got hurt, and then no more back-to-backs for him. So it's like the view was quite myopic from what it should have been. If he took the bigger picture at mind, maybe you save Jamal Murray or Nikola Jokic a game or two here on the second night of a back-to-back. When maybe everyone is complaining about the Nuggets getting into Memphis at 4 a.m., maybe that's the game where you go, I'm not going to put my guys out there. But you did repeatedly throughout the season, and then now, when there is still something to play for, you decide to sit them all. So, look, in the end, it all worked out. And we don't have to have the same conversations that we did 2 years ago. The Nuggets, to me, got what was realistically the most ideal path once San Antonio and OKC separated themselves from everybody else. But but the Spurs deserve a pat on the back here. I don't think they like the pat on the back for this, but they deserve it, because if they wouldn't have absolutely blew that game on Sunday, then we'd be having a very different conversation about David Adelman and what he decided to do. But it worked out. And now onward and upward, it will be the Nuggets and the Wolves in round 1 starting on Saturday. Take your thoughts. Did you agree with how Adelman approached these last 2 games, and how do you feel about Minnesota? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the Avalanche didn't have anything to play for Saturday, and yet still saw their star players. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tax day is almost here, Wednesday to be exact, but don't stress. Enter the Uncle Sam's giveaway for a chance to win $5,000 to bail you out. Head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest for your chance to win $5,000 with the Uncle Sam's giveaway, sponsored locally by Kruger Brothers Construction. Plan now, build stress free. You know, it's funny. I go to the Avs game on Saturday night. The Avs legitimately have nothing to play for. Nothing. They have home ice throughout the entire postseason locked up. There's nothing they can do unless they want to be super spiteful to their opponents, like Vegas on Saturday, and beat them to ruin their season, which I don't think is really, especially the way the playoffs are set up, I don't really think that enters the mind of the Colorado Avalanche. So they have everything sewn up, and yet I see Nathan MacKinnon. I see Gabriel Landeskog. I see Marty Necas. And not one of them played fewer minutes than they usually do. In fact, Gabriel Landeskog had more ice time on Saturday than he had over the past month. Someone has to convince me that basketball players are significantly more at risk for injury than hockey players. Or else I'm going to go with it's culture. It's the culture of the sport. The NBA and basketball has adopted that load management is okay, and hockey hasn't. That's the best I can come up with, because the Avs have far less on the line Saturday than the Nuggets had the previous night on Friday, and yet all the best players, save for obviously Kadri and Makar, who have legitimate injuries, are on the ice playing their normal amount of minutes. And the Denver Nuggets on Friday night in the same building sat at everybody that anyone in that building was coming out to watch. Is one better than the other? Yeah. Yeah, I think one's better than the other. I think it's pretty clear what culture is better than the other right now. And look, there are merits to load management. Like, I get it. Less of a risk of getting hurt if they don't play. But there's one sport that takes that next step and goes, well, we're not playing any of our guys. And there's one sport that says we're going to play through to the end. And I think fans appreciate one mentality over the other. And what you got on Saturday, being in that building, you didn't know. I mean, I knew, obviously. I knew coming into the game, the Avs had nothing to play for. I knew that. The person I went to the game with didn't know that. And the way that the building was, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't have known that the Avalanche have nothing to play for, because they saw Nathan MacKinnon and they saw Gabriel Landeskog and they saw Marty Necas and they saw a team with the players they know and love playing hard. Ball Arena was just as lively as it has been at any point during the season. You know, if there's no Nathan MacKinnon, if there's no Gabriel Landeskog, then maybe I would have noticed a difference. I would have felt the disappointment in the crowd. But that didn't happen because the Avs played them. Now, maybe the opponent had something to do with it in terms of the crowd, because it was those dirty, dirty nights that are shooting pucks at Jared Bednar, apparently. Now, I could kind of make a little bit of light of it. I don't want to make too much light of it because it was a scary moment. And I didn't know it. Like, I didn't think anything of it. Where I was sitting, I was behind the goal that the Avs were shooting at in the first and third period. So the benchers are to my left. The Vegas bench is closer to me than the Avs bench. I didn't see it happen. And then there's a stoppage and there's somebody going on. The only reason I knew it was Jared Bednar is because of his dope suit. That was the only reason I knew it was Bednar. And I told someone behind me that it's Jared Bednar. He didn't believe me, and lo and behold. So take that guy. I was right. But yeah, so Jared Bednar, not on the road trip currently with the Avs. Dealing with facial fractures. I mean, it's serious, but it seems like the prognosis is good, which is the best news to hear. But the fact that it was Vegas maybe had the crowd a little bit more amped up. Because that it's them, it's Minnesota, it's Detroit. Trying to think, who am I missing here? Would those be, and you can rank them any way that you want, are those the three that when they're in there, that Avs fans are a little bit, frothing at the mouth a little bit more? I would say it's probably those three. So that could have been part of it too. But I do think it was mostly because you wouldn't know the Avs had nothing to play for based on who played in that game. And again, another thing that I probably noticed that the person I was with or many of the fans at Ball Arena didn't is when you watch the Avs all season, you know when they don't really have it. They're playing hard, but they just don't have it. And that was noticeable. The execution was not at the level that you would come to expect from the Avalanche. And assistant coach Nolan Pratt, who filled in for Jared Bednar after he left, also filled in for him in the post-game press conference and basically intimated kind of what I was thinking leaving the arena on Saturday night.
We were okay. We've kind of solidified our position there. So you fight that a little bit with trying to stay sharp as we move forward here through the next few games. So, I thought we did enough to generate a couple more goals potentially. But when you get to overtime, we miss an opportunity with Taser that probably was in if it doesn't catch the knob of his stick, and then they capitalize going the other way. So there's some good things in there, but it's more about us just trying to stay sharp now as we move through these last few.
The Avalanche could not, and this has been a little bit of a recurring theme lately, the Avalanche just can't match the desperation of some of these teams. And I thought the Vegas Golden Knights were the more desperate team, and they had every reason to be the more desperate team on Saturday. And in addition to the desperation, because with Jack Eichel's winner in overtime, Vegas clinched a playoff spot. You also can't match the bump this team is getting with John Tortorella. I don't think they've lost in regulation. I think they have one OT loss, if I'm not mistaken. They've been terrific since Torts took over the bench. And I've talked about this. I talked about this when Vegas made the move. It's the Vegas way of thinking, anti-fragility. It's in the tech world. It's applied to emergency surgery. You identify what's most important, and you maintain those no matter what. But everything else around it is less of a priority. For them, it's continuously pushing for the Stanley Cup. They're always going, always trying to contend. That's so everything they do is with that in mind. And then they feel, and the core of this team is Eichel. It's, Mark Stone. It's their skaters. The goalie is not really a core member of the team, which is another spot that they routinely change out. But the idea is a system can benefit from stress if the instability is placed correctly. Vegas uses these coaching changes, these goalie changes as a spark, knowing that they're going to maintain and keep intact the most important part of their team. And it's working. I thought this would stress it to the nth degree because even Vegas hasn't made a coaching move this late in the season. But it's right in line with their thinking, and it's worked. And I thought Carter Hart would, I mean, I'm not going to talk about Carter Hart, the human being, but I'll talk about him, the goalie. I thought he was really good on Saturday. So it seems like some changes with the goaltender and with the coach have been, once again, exactly what Vegas needed. I think I came away from that game not so much changing my thoughts about the Avs in any way, shape, or form. I think I'm a little bit higher on Vegas, having watched them in person. Now, the Avs, and part of the reason why I don't feel different about the Avs, I don't think that the Avs quite had it, and yet that game went into overtime. They basically played Vegas to a stalemate. So this is not me saying if the Avs meet up with Vegas that I would be worried, but the potential that these two teams could meet up, I think, is greater than it was 2 weeks ago. I think this move, bringing in John Tortorella, is going to get Vegas back to what we thought they would be at the beginning of the year. And I would not be surprised if they make it out of the Pacific half of the bracket in the Western Conference. I think I might take them, honestly. And that would be interesting to see in the Western Conference final if it was Vegas and Colorado again. I'd still take Colorado, but came away thinking a little bit differently about Vegas. And I thought the great line that Torts dropped on my once colleague, Eric Johnson, who I've shared a broadcast booth with a couple of times on ABC, he just got out of their way. He's not the Torts that's you employ when you're a rebuilding team. He's a guy that's been around the block, knows what it takes to win at the highest level, but he looked at this team as veteran-led as they are, as talented as they are, and says, I'm not trying to rock the boat here. And maybe Bruce Cassidy towards the end was, maybe a little micromanaging what was going on. But it's working. It's working for Vegas, and I'm fascinated to see. I was already fascinated, but having watched them in person on Saturday, I'm even more fascinated to see how they fare in the postseason. But for the Avs, 2 more games, and then it's on to the postseason. Thinking maybe Sunday would be game 1. Tonight, though, they play Edmonton, which actually will be kind of a nice experiment for me because now I can compare Vegas and Edmonton in short order and decide who I feel a little bit better about going into the playoffs. But Avs will take on Edmonton. No Jared Bednar tonight for the Avs. No Makar or Kadri at all, although Kale did skate this morning. So that's a positive sign for the Avs. But they're trying to stay sharp, as Nolan Pratt said. They're trying to stay sharp these last couple of games and get ready for when it really starts up. You can hear the game between the Avs and Oilers at 7:30 on Extra Sports 1300. Coming up next, no question in the college hockey world who the Kings are, and I think a secret to the success of not only DU, but the NCHC was revealed by David Kroll this weekend. Get to that next. Tomorrow night, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC takes on MLS club Sporting Kansas City at Widener Field in the third round of the U.S. Open Cup. A win would give the Switchbacks their first ever victory over a club from the top of the soccer pyramid in this fine country of ours. So, yeah, it's a big deal if you'd like to be there. Tickets available, switchbacksfc.com. Kickoff is at 6 tomorrow night at Widener Field. So DU did it again, and I'm far less surprised that they beat Wisconsin as opposed to beating Michigan, and that's not a slight on Wisconsin. Didn't just feel like after beating Michigan, the way they beat Michigan, like, yeah, team of destiny stuff. They're going to win. And I was at Ball Arena. It was cool. They were showing the game on the Jumbotron there at Ball Arena, and the place obviously erupted when the final seconds ticked off of it. But, you know, we keep asking the question, and college hockey keeps asking the question, how does DU keep doing this? They're not Michigan. They're not Wisconsin. I mean, in people's minds, they're not even CU or CSU. In terms of when you think of the prominent athletic programs in the state, how does little Denver University keep doing this? And I thought David Carl, their head coach, was absolutely on the money when he was talking about money not being everything.
Money doesn't buy everything, and bigness doesn't win championships all the time, at least in our sport. And maybe that's changing. Everybody seems to think it is or could or will. I will tell you, we will do our damnedest in our conference and at Denver to make sure it doesn't happen that way. But, you know, we're really proud to represent the NCHC, the best league in college hockey. If you're a kid who wants to win and develop, we think it's the best place to be.
And look, let's not act like Denver isn't paying players, okay? This isn't, that we have no money. They're paying players. But I think what still can't get lost as the tectonic plate shift in college athletics. Both genders, every sport, every level, it's all changing, right? In a major way. But we can't lose the fact that commitment is the most important thing. Now, if you compare commitment with money, you get, Michigan basketball, you get Indiana football, right? But it starts with the commitment. And there is nothing that Denver University is more committed to than their hockey team. Right? And there's literally nothing, no other sport that the NCHC is committed to except hockey. So while all this money floods into like the Big Ten, and maybe Wisconsin and Michigan are able to pay their players a little bit more, if you're a young hockey player and you step onto a campus in East Lansing or Ann Arbor or Madison, are you going to feel the same way that you do when you step onto a campus in Duluth, Minnesota, or Denver, Colorado, or Colorado Springs, Colorado? No, you're not going to feel the same. You step onto the campus of Minnesota, Duluth, Western Michigan, Denver, Colorado College, you're going to feel like you're big man on campus. The most important thing, obviously, other than education, are the hockey teams of those schools. And you are going to step on and feel like a big deal and feel like whatever investment is available, which may not be what it is. I don't have the numbers, but it may not be what it is at Michigan in terms of pure dollars. but you're going to feel like the head coach is committed to you. The player development angle with Denver is one of the most fascinating things, right? Back-to-back years now, they've had goalies that are not largely viewed as like these studs that these other schools have. And yet they pour into them, they coach them up, and they come up big in the biggest moments. The commitment from the NCHC, the individual schools within it, that's a draw. That's where they can kind of counteract the sheer dollars and cents that a Wisconsin, a Michigan State, a Michigan can provide. And look, you're 18, 19, 20 years old. You don't want to be like, this isn't a bad thing. You don't want to be the big man on campus. You don't want to be looked at and like, this school, not that it's here for me, but like, I'm going to be valued here. It's not as transactional as it may feel. This is the biggest deal in these cities and on these campuses. It's hockey. How could you not be drawn to that if you're looking for the best college hockey experience you can get? And oh, by the way, they routinely put guys into the NHL. So it's not like, you know, your career is going to definitely end once you graduate from DU or Duluth or Colorado College. So the money is the money. And look, DU still has to raise their money. All of these schools still have to do the NIL stuff. You can't not do it and expect to be successful. But can they make up some of the difference by this being their thing? And we're very early, but look at the results. Look at how many titles, not just Denver, but the conference has. And it's because this is what they do. Their attention is not pulled in 18 different directions. Well, we got balance. We want to field, put out a competitive hockey team, but at the same time, football's king here. Or we got men's basketball and we got football. And I'm not saying those other schools have those sports. I'm just saying, where are they at in the pecking order? Where's the priority? Can that make up the difference? It sure seems to have, albeit still early. And David Carl even mentioned that. Like, maybe it will ultimately change. But right now, it feels like college sports is wildly different, and yet here we are, Denver still winning national titles. The NCHC is still dominating the sport. It's because all of their energy, the vast majority of their energy, is put into this. Michigan hockey, as great of a program as that is what, at best, the third most important sport on that campus? Commitment to the athletes that you're bringing in, commitment to the facilities, commitment to developing all of this kind of stuff, caring. Maybe it's not just commitment. Maybe it starts with caring. The level of care for hockey in the NCHC and at its member schools has to be greater than it is in 90% of the programs across the country. And I just pulled that number out. But we keep talking about the Big Ten. That's the power struggle right now. With the NCHC, they're winning that battle of caring. Because these schools, they love hockey more than anything else. They commit to it more than anything else. You're playing in a conference that does not have basketball, football, all these other things, all these other masters they have to serve. And I think that matters. And you can't replicate it in a lot of other sports. A lot of the conferences that exist in America have to worry about a lot of different sports. NCHC is unique. And I think it's why their demise, if anybody is talking about it, may be greatly exaggerated. But DU winning 11 national titles now. Good for them. I hope they lose 8-0 every matchup with CC and Air Force next year. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, was this a successful regular season for the Denver Nuggets? My thoughts and David Adelman's thoughts as well here on KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Appreciate you tuning in today, especially if you're watching the show. Anywhere you scroll at 740 KVR and at Extra Sports 1300 while you're there, please. You're already doing me a big favor, but if I could ask one more of you, like, subscribe, and comment, because this is an interactive experience. The text and phone lines are open for you as well at 719-247-1313. I don't know about you. I am so glad the NBA regular season is over. This felt, overall, it felt very tedious. A lot of negative going on with that sport right now. And I'm glad that tanking is going to be put to the side. I hear more bad ideas being thrown out, more overly complicated ideas being thrown out there. The closest one to what I've been saying, abolish the draft lottery, is Charles Barkley saying, give everyone one ping pong ball. That is a true lottery in many ways, right? But now we're going to have, if that were to be the case, we're going to have conversations to whether a team who's at 6 should just tank and get out of the playoffs entirely because they get one ping pong ball the same as everybody else. So you could kind of give it a go for a while and then massively tank because you're like, yeah, I'm not playing Denver, San Antonio, or OKC. Forget that noise. And I have just as good of a chance as Utah, who's been throwing away games all year. I don't think that's the answer either. But we can put all that to the side now. And unfortunately, load management became a point of contention with the Denver Nuggets at the end of the season here. I did not agree with the way that David Adelman handled all of this. I thought for them to be more worried about their own pocketbooks rather than the pocketbooks of their fan base by playing knowing they would play Nikola Jokic one more game so he could be eligible for the postseason awards, and you choose to play him on the road because you would be fined for sitting 2 stars on a nationally televised game. Like, that's what it was. He was going to play regardless one of these 2 games. Play him with in front of your fans who paid their money and repeatedly paid their money throughout the season to support your team. Play him then. But they cared more about their own pocketbook. They didn't want to get fined. Jokic just played on Sunday, so he wouldn't get fined. So we even got that. We didn't have to do the tanking thing with the Denver Nuggets, but we got load management here at the end. But now that the riffraff is gone and we don't even have to think about those blights on the league like Utah and Washington, and we can focus on the best of the best and the biggest prize of the year, which is an NBA championship. It's good. You kind of take a deep breath and say, we're done with all that crap, and now we can move forward and crown a champion. And despite the way that it ended and how I disagreed vehemently with the way David Adelman handled all of this, I think you have to zoom out and say this was a successful season for the Denver Nuggets. There were a lot of questions about David Adelman, right? Even though this team seemed like they responded to him in the postseason, and it made sense that Josh Kroenke gave him the job. There were still questions, and there were still times that tested how ready for this job David Adelman was. Losing Jokic for a month. Integrating not just Jokic, but all of these injured players back into the rotation, figuring it out, and now you sit back, and I know nobody played the last 2 games, but the Nuggets end the season on a 12-game winning streak. I think on balance, it was a successful full year one under David Adelman. And specifically about the way that the Denver Nuggets finished, here's Adelman on how he feels.
It's high, but it just restarts now. We have a week to prepare. I am immensely proud, most road wins in team history, to get to 54 with all the stuff that's going on. Just immensely proud of the group. And like I said, it was a cool way to end the year without your best guys and the sense of guys that play the most minutes and still play the right way. So it was just we feel good about ourselves, but so these other teams do too. And we know what this is going to be. The Western Conference playoffs are going to be absolutely insane.
And I think they will be. But I think the Western Conference playoffs set up ideally, not necessarily for any one team, but just I guess I'll just get into it here and then get back David Adelman. I think it's right that the Denver Nuggets go through Minnesota in round one. Given what happened 2 years ago, given the rivalry between these two teams, and the best part about it is it's not manufactured. It's not what the NHL does and say you have to play a rival of yours. This just naturally happened, which makes it better. But you have the Nuggets going up against Minnesota, and then the debate this year, I don't know how much of one it's been. It really hasn't even been a debate on this show. But it's been nationally, it's Spurs, right? All season. Here it's been, no, not the Spurs, the Nuggets, in terms of who the best matchup, who the biggest threat to OKC is. Well, we're going to find out. We're going to have a 7-game series to find out who truly is the biggest threat to OKC, because they're going to battle it out. And the winner's going to get OKC. And then we'll get a premier matchup of either San Antonio or Denver going up against the defending champions. For Denver, it would be, show that you pushed them to 7 games the year before. You made yourselves better in order to beat OKC, and now you can do it. Or San Antonio, what they did to OKC during the regular season was real, and they can replicate it. So I know that's a very Nuggets-centric take, but that's kind of what I'm here for. I mean, if Luka is able to play, the Rockets-Lakers series gets spicier. I never care about the play-in, so miss me with all that stuff. I think the path for the Denver Nuggets specifically, but for the NBA, I think it sets up great. And then you got Boston waiting on the other side of the bracket. Right? OKC didn't get a chance to match up with Boston. Denver didn't get that chance to match up with Boston. And now both of these teams have a chance to. So I think the path is about the best path it could be. Not necessarily, but I would say from the Nuggets in terms of maximizing their success, I do think it sets up well, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the natural progression, the storylines, everything like that. I think it's set up really well to be a really fun postseason. But back to David Adelman, he does deserve a lot of credit up until the last 2 games for how he's managed the health of his team. And he got to the finish line, and save for Peyton Watson, who is still a fairly significant question mark in terms of when he's going to be available. I mean, if Peyton Watson is the one big question mark, remembering how it felt with the Nuggets at certain points this season, I think you take that. Peyton Watson, one of their bench guys, is the biggest question mark that they may or may not have him when Saturday rolls around. I think all told, that's about the best news you could hope for. They did get the most road wins in the NBA, as David Adelman mentioned. They got both of their star players playing at the highest level that they have played at in their careers, at least from a statistical basis. With Jamal Murray, it's not even a question. You might, even though the numbers say this is Nikola Jokic's finest season, maybe you don't want to be so beholden to that, and you look at a season where he played every game, a season where he won MVP. But statistically, both of them are playing at their highest level. Jamal Murray finally answered the bell when it came to being available, night in and night out, playing at a high level, and he's played at the highest level of his career. Aaron Gordon is available for the postseason. And I think you have to say that, and this goes beyond David Adelman, but David Adelman's a part of this. I think you have to say, undoubtedly, the Denver Nuggets are a deeper basketball team than they were this time a year ago. Maybe not all of these pieces turned out to be what you hoped they would be, Jonas Valanciunas, or the role that they occupy, maybe not be the role that you expected them to have, Jonas Valanciunas. But Tim Hardaway is a sixth man of the year candidate. Peyton Watson, his breakout year that he has had this year. You get back Bruce Brown. He's not the Bruce Brown that they had 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, whatever it was now. But I didn't expect him to be that. The guy has played good defense. I think this team is deeper. And then you get Cam Johnson rounding into form after a real struggle. I think I said this a week or two ago. I think the Nuggets... I think the Nuggets needed every one of the 82. I think that's what you could say as you kind of look back at the season. They needed every single one of these 82 to get not just Nikola Jokic award eligible, but to get them in their best form. I don't know what reasonably could be expected for this Denver Nuggets team ending the year on a 12-game winning streak. What you saw from Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic this year, the way the new pieces have been integrated, I think they needed every one of the 82 games, and I think the byproduct is the best version of this team they're going to get. And if they bow out round one, round two against San Antonio, Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals, I think that the Nuggets will be able to look at this and say, we got a good look at it. We made the moves we needed to. We got our stars to step up. Our coach did a good job. We got to the finish line as healthy as could be expected. And if it's not good enough to knock off OKC, all right. Then you go back this offseason and you figure out what you were missing. But I think for that reason, this was a very successful first year under David Adelman. Now, we have this second season coming up. And let's not pretend that just being here is what this season is about. I'm judging one portion of the season, one of the two seasons. The ultimate goal is the Nuggets winning a title. And if they don't win, it would be a failure because they made all these moves to win a title. It's championship or bust. Okay? And there may be a different conversation about David Adelman or about this team 2 months from now. But what you were looking at getting out of the Denver Nuggets, you didn't get everything. You didn't check every box. Christian Brown is a liability in my mind. But Cam Johnson was playing his best basketball leading up to the end of the season. Aaron Gordon's healthy-ish. And here's another thing, too. I was saying this to Ray earlier today. We have to admit that as much as we want to make Aaron Gordon out to be a hero for what he did in Game 7, and that absolutely is the case, it had long-term ramifications. It did. Like him playing in that game, I mean, his hamstring's still not right. But it's better than he's healthier than he has been for much of this season. So not every single box was checked. But you weigh those two columns and you say there was much more good that came out of this Nuggets season than bad, and much more of a reason, I think, to believe where I'm at. I don't know that I would take them over OKC, but in a world, if you told me today, guaranteed me that OKC was not going to win a title, I would immediately tell you that the Denver Nuggets are going to be NBA champions. That's how I feel going into these playoffs. But I don't know that, honestly, anything in the regular season was really going to move you off of the idea that the Thunder are better than the Nuggets. I mean, that's not how we judge these things. They got to beat them in the playoffs. And that's part of why I'm not totally buying into San Antonio. It's great what they did during the regular season. It's all they've had available to them, but the ultimate test is if they match up with OKC in 7 games. It's the same thing with Denver. Let's say that the season series was completely flipped. Would you be 100%? Oh, definitely. The Denver Nuggets are going to be OKC. I think you'd be more confident, but you couldn't know for sure because you know how different the playoffs are. So I don't know if anything in retrospect was going to move me in a direction that I would say that Denver is above OKC. But the position that I could have been moved off of and was wobbling a little bit on at certain times this season was whether Denver was the next team up. And sitting here after 82 games, I firmly believe that the Denver Nuggets, health permitting, obviously, if they can't knock off OKC, I don't know that anybody can in the West. And I have my doubts about everybody in the East. Maybe Boston could beat OKC. But in the Western Conference, which is where our focus is, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's see the East play out. In the West, if it's not OKC, it's Denver. 719-24-7. 1313. Our question of the day on Facebook: was this a successful Nuggets regular season? I vote yay. How do you vote? 719-24-7, 1313. Our question of the day, was this a successful Nuggets season? David Adelman seems to think so. What say you? Few ways to get in touch with the show. You could call or text 719-247-1313. You can also answer our question of the day on Facebook, and some combination of that is what producer Ray Dominguez is going to go to right now. So on the topic of the Nuggets, what do we got?
So was this a successful Denver Nuggets season? We
Mhm.
have Robert on Facebook saying, yes, they set themselves up for a showdown with the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals.
Yep, and I think that's what we all want to see.
Yeah.
We don't want to see that matchup happen in round 2. I don't think, even though the Nuggets, and I'll play this clip from David Adelman that kind of speaks to this. Nobody's saying the Nuggets are ducking OKC.
No.
They know OKC is going to be sitting there. All right.
Yeah.
They got play the play-in winner, and then they got the winner of the Rockets and Lakers.
Right.
Like, they're going to be there, but it's about setting up the right path and a natural progression through the postseason. Here's David Adelman on his thoughts going into the playoffs.
We've played so many times over the years, playoffs, regular season. We know each other with Tim over there, and Chris Finch and Micah and those guys. So we know it's going to be a battle. I mean, it always is with that team. But I know this. You can't duck opponents, and they didn't want to duck us. We're not ducking anybody. And everybody talks about the best matchup and all these things. You don't know what's going to happen. And if you're asking to play against Kevin Durant, what? So it's the opponent's the opponent, and we have a ton of respect for them, as I know they do for us. It's going to be a hell of a series.
Nikola, it looked like he was.
I never once said that I thought any of this was about the Nuggets' first round opponent.
Right.
I gave my thoughts on who I would like to see them play. At times we debated which one was better. What David Adelman did this weekend, I don't think had anything to do with the first round. Well, clearly it didn't have anything to do with the second round because it could have cost them. But my argument, it's not the first round. It's the second round. Getting San Antonio in round 2, I think, is preferred over getting OKC in round 2. It just is. It's not ducking anybody. What I would compare to ducking, what I would say is ducking is when you lose intentionally.
Right.
When you tank games in order to avoid somebody. I think that's probably what David Adelman was pushing back against, because the fact that he didn't play anybody maybe looked at. I remember in the bubble, the Nuggets were trying to duck teams and they wanted Utah and it nearly cost them. This is just getting the best seed you can. All of this is born out of winning. Mm-hmm. If you keep winning, then it's whatever you're doing is fine. I think it's when you introduce the idea that losing might be better that becomes problematic. And never once were we discussing. It was always the better the Nuggets do, the better their path is going to set up for the most part, because you would be on the opposite side of the bracket as Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and I think another thing, like he said, is, okay, we tank this and we have Kevin Durant, like that.
Wait, you want me to play it? I'll turn off the mic so you can hear it.
What?
What?
Yeah, you want to play Kevin Durant?
What?
Like, it wasn't anything of tanking, because there was no path for them if they lost to have a easy-ish matchup in the first round.
Right. By doing exactly right. David Adelman, by doing what he did, risked the Nuggets having a worse run through it's about round 2. It's not really about not round 1. Not to say that everyone, and I know this is your big thing of the week, not overlooking Minnesota. I think it's going to be an epic series. I think it's going to be fantastic. I just expect the Denver Nuggets to get through that. This is just about expectation. It's not about, they breeze past Minnesota or they breeze past Houston. I think they're better than both of those teams. They should be able to beat both of those two teams. My thing has always been be on the opposite side of Oklahoma City, and let's, to the texter's point, or on the Facebook commenter, let's get this matchup in the Western Conference Finals,
Right.
with a trip to the NBA Finals on the line.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was another thing. Like David Edelman said this maybe a couple last week. He said, when you can control your own destiny, basically, when the schedule works out in your favor, you have to take advantage of it. And you had to take advantage of, you know what, we have some games that we know with these. Well, besides San Antonio, I guess they played everybody, but we're not in the running for a 1 seed. We're not in the running for the 2 seed. It doesn't really matter what we do here. Our guys, we've been dealing with health issues all season.
But to your point, their destiny was in their hands. They keep winning. The byproduct would be you get the better path through the postseason. It was never, he even kind of contradicted himself in a way, because he put their destiny out of their hands this weekend by not playing any of these guys, or at least not balancing it out, where maybe on Friday you see Jokic and Murray, but Sunday you see Cam and Aaron Gordon or something like that. I think he kind of contradicted himself. And look, year one, there was not everything that David Adelman did that I agree with.
Oh,
but at the end of the day, end of the season, I think he got more right than wrong. And it just so happens that we're having this discussion at the exact same time as I'm criticizing him for the way he handled this weekend. But I'm looking at 82 games and I'm saying,
yeah, because if you look at it, at the end of the day, he had to deal with everything. He had to deal with injuries and things like that. And he has a better record than they did when they won the championship. He's a top 3 seed.
Most road wins
in team history.
Longest win streak in the Nikola Jokic
history.
Not NBA history.
Not NBA history. In Nikola Jokic.
Nikola Jokic era.
So I'm just saying, Coach of the Year might be in question.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
That's a tomorrow.
That's a tomorrow.
That's a tomorrow thing. All right. So maybe not on specifically the Nuggets, but branching off of there, what else do we got on the text line and stuff?
From the 719, we got another problem with the NBA is they have way too many timeouts. Games take 30 minutes to play the last 5 minutes of the game. Hockey flows, and the NBA is slower than molasses in the middle of winter. I just like the way Batman bracket.
Yeah, Gary Bettman.
Batman bracket is set up. Should be 1 through 8 in the conference. He's the only one who likes it that setup.
Yeah. And that is a text regarding, I said that I went to the Avs game on Saturday, and the Avs have nothing to play for in terms of matchup standings, all that kind of stuff. That's all done. And yet I see Nathan McKinnon, and I see Gabriel Landeskog, and I see Marty Necas all on the ice playing the same amount of minutes they always do. And I think it's a culture thing. NBA has allowed load management to be a part of their culture, and it's not necessarily for the best. And when you compare it to the hockey culture is better. And then obviously you could go beyond that and say whose playoffs are better, who's, the games and all that kind of stuff like the texter is referring to. But it was load management, and I get it, and I understand, the best way to keep from having an accident while skiing is to not ski. Like, I understand all this stuff, but there's a balance, and there's a tipping point. And I think the NBA is way past this, where load management has become their biggest problem. And it even struck the Nuggets this weekend while, they rest everybody on Friday. One night later, the Avs, as intact as they can be, knowing that they didn't have Cale Makar and Nazem Kadri, we're still out there on the ice with nothing really to play for. So it's hockey culture is better. That's the moral of the story. Doesn't mean I don't like both leagues. I do.
Right.
What's the next one?
From the same texter. This is Steve, by the way. Denver winning another national championship just shows the disparity between DU and CC. DU is committed to winning national championships, and CC cares about trying to fill seats. They haven't been competitive for a long time. They used to fill the Broadmoor World Arena, and now they can't fill their new one. Have a buddy who has season tickets and gives them to us, and is ready to give them up to us.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna defend. I've recently had the athletic director of that school on this show.
Yeah,
I can tell you that CC wants to win as badly as Denver does.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a fair accusation, if you want to call it that, to levy against them. I really think next year for Colorado College is going to be a very telling year, because I think this year you have to be honest. I know some of the names remained, especially in goal with Caden and Barrico, but the fact of the matter is this was a transitional year, and so I think judging Colorado College on this year, I think, is a little unfair. I think you have to look at what Chris Mayotte took over and what he has built up, and I think that they are on the right track. But now he's hitting the more difficult trick to complete, right? Which is going from a team that is competitive and is in the thick of things to one that's now near the top of a conference that I talked about last hour that is 100% committed to hockey. Nobody's attention at any of those schools is on anything other than hockey. It's even tougher in the NCHC to pull off what Chris Mayotte is trying to pull off. I think that next year is going to be a year where I think some judgment can be levied here, but I think from where they were, I think they're light years from where they were. So I'll defend Colorado College a little bit, but that's not to say that there isn't still a significant gap between the school up north and this one.
Yeah,
there is. That's just a reality. And the question will ultimately become, can CC close that gap? Not yet, but we'll see in the future.
719. Dang, Ryan, banging on the home teams. One game away from the Super Bowl. Avs win the President's Trophy and division. Nugs are sitting pretty at the 3 seed, and the Rocks are near 500. But that's another story. Are you a little too critical, maybe, bro? Throw him a bone.
I'm not. Why? I can't. This is catch 22. I have gone on for 2 weeks now raving about those plucky Rockies.
Yes, you have.
And overlooking the fact that they are not a good baseball team. And I am being homerish, and I am, sipping the Kool-Aid and everything, and no one says anything. and then I say that in a league with this many teams, I happen to think that the Nuggets maybe can't be OKC. The one team, they can't beat one team.
Yeah.
And I'm negative. That's fine. I think I'm being, and by the way, I have argued that the Denver Broncos are the favorite in the AFC West this year. But I will say that I think there's other places you can go. And I know the texture's being playful. I'm not trying to, make this more serious than it needs to be. But I'm just saying there are places in the media landscape where if you just want to hear rah, rah, pom-poms, everything is great, nothing is bad, those exist.
Right.
I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, if I think something, even if it's negative, I'm going to say it. Most of the time, unless it's the Rockies and they give me a little bit of hope, and then I get completely carried away and drunk off of the purple Kool-Aid. But, when it's warranted, I'll be critical. But look, I think that the Avs are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. I think that the Nuggets are one of 3 teams that I take four teams. Thank you. That I take seriously as title contenders. Mm-hmm. So they're in that group. By the way, for the record, Boston, San Antonio, OKC, and Denver.
Yeah.
I believe in some of them more than others, but I would not be absolutely floored if any of those 4 teams ended up winning the title. Anybody else outside those 4, I would be shocked.
I don't think, and again, it's not like you're throwing shade or anything at the Nuggets. It's just being real. I think every Nuggets fan kind of has the same feeling.
Yeah.
Where there's one team that's in their way. Well, besides the Nuggets themselves, there's one team in their way.
Right. And thankfully we have the potential to see it on the best stage it could possibly be on.
Yeah.
And not have this stuff where round 2 and then.
My question for you is, how good of a series would it be between OKC and Denver?
Health wise? Yeah. I think the way I'm looking at it now, and obviously things can change to David Adelman's point. I think the way I'm looking at it, I will look at a 7-game series in which I feel like it is truly back and forth. It is truly nip and tuck. It's this tug of war, because I thought last year that there was, and I got to remember the game. I think it was game 3. I think OKC rallied or something happened in crunch time that I feel like the Thunder grew up and finally understood truly what it takes to win in the NBA playoffs. And I thought from that point on, OKC, even though the series did end up going 7, I just never felt like the Nuggets were going to win the series, because I just felt like OKC became a different animal after that point. And look, the only reason there was a game 7 is because we got Julian Strawther game in game 6. So not saying it's fraudulent, but it was unexpected.
Right.
The way the series was going, it looked like it was 6. Julian Strawther pops up with a, out of body experience, and we get a 7th game. I think the way I'm looking at a potential Western Conference final between Denver and OKC is that we get a legit 7-gamer where we're going to be on the edge of our seats the entire way, maybe not being able to make heads or tails of who's actually going to come out on top. And I think that's what you want. You just, that's the progress for the Denver Nuggets is get into a series where maybe it does come down to game 7, and the game 7 is going to be in OKC.
Yep.
And maybe some lessons are going to be learned in that. But I think I expect a series that is truly back and forth. Truly, you may have your opinions, but you're not completely sold one way or another, because your opinion can change one way or another. As I think it's going to be a phenomenal series. I think the Denver Nuggets are going to be in 3 phenomenal series,
which I don't like.
Don't mistake me talking about Nuggets in the Western Conference Final with I'm going right over Minnesota and San Antonio. I think the Denver Nuggets, and I said this last week, I think the Denver Nuggets may be in for one of the most impressive title runs we have ever seen, because I think that they're going through Minnesota, San Antonio, OKC, and Boston potentially. I think every one of those games, every one of those series could be 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
And against quality teams. I think Minnesota, this series starting on Saturday, is going to be epic. I think that the Wemby and Jokic for 7 games is going to be must-watch television. I just expect the Denver Nuggets to come through those 2 series. So
I just don't I'm sorry. I just feel if they need to get to that last series, the Western Conference, they have to make an early series of the first round.
Ray's very worried about this Timberwolves series. I'll just let you know that. You're going to hear that throughout the week. He's very worried about this. By the way, game 1 of that series has been announced. It is a 1:30 tip on Saturday. And if you want to listen to the games and get the hometown call, because if you know now with the NBA, there are no local calls on any of these playoff series. Every playoff game is going to be a nationally televised, nationally called product, and the regional sports networks, including Altitude, are frozen out of them. So if you want the hometown call of the Denver Nuggets against Minnesota, it will be Saturday on KVOR. We're going to utilize both of these stations in order to make sure that we bring you absolutely every game of the Avs and Nuggets title runs that we can. So it will be game one will be Saturday on VOR, and when the rest of the series schedule unfolds, we will let you know where you can find them. Take a break, come back, and wrap up hour number 2 after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Join us Monday, May 4th at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo for the Small Business Bash and Awards Celebration. Enjoy awards, networking, festivities, and live music. Then join us all week for workshops, panels, and networking events, all for the small businesses in our community. Small Business Week is hosted by the Pikes Peak SBDC, Colorado Springs Chamber, and EDC, and the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado. Register now at kvor.com. I want to talk about Rory, but I'll probably wait till next hour. I don't have much time. I want to tell you about my new best friend at the Avalanche game that I met. So I mentioned earlier that there are probably 3 teams that truly get Avalanche fans worked up into a tizzy. Wild fans, Red Wings fans, and Golden Knights fans. And sure enough, I didn't know it at first. It was a guy in my row. He's a few seats down. There are people between me and him. I just hear him going on about how he's rooting for America, and he just keeps yelling Jack Eichel. Go Jack, go Eichel. I root for America. And then after a while, he remembered Noah Hannafin is also American, so he threw him into the mix. I'm like, who is this guy that's clearly either stoned or drunk that keeps yelling about, like, you really came out to the game and are only rooting for the American players? And I'm like, wait a minute, aren't there American players on the Avs? I mean, there are Americans. And then a couple of people that were separating me and him in the row get up, and sure enough, he's wearing Vegas gear. Piece of the puzzle falls into place. Not a great representative. I just gotta tell you, Vegas fans, if you're listening, like, you are being very, very poorly represented out in the world. I'm sure you are an upstanding fan that just roots for your team. Maybe you talk a little trash because that's part of the fun. But you are not pre-gaming so hard that you are like that dude. I'm sure you're not. So speak up and say he doesn't represent all of us. He was annoying the bejesus out of everybody in our section. Staff had to be called multiple times to check on him. I think finally he passed out. And that's when security was like, okay, you got to leave now. I hope he got home okay. It's a long drive from Denver to Las Vegas. But, yeah, that didn't help. That didn't help at all. The reputation of Vegas Golden Knights fan for the one Vegas fan in the section to be like that. And also, by the way, I'm not putting down anybody that likes to have themselves a good time, okay? To be under the influence of something so much that you can't even truly comprehend what's going on in the game. Like, the seats I was sitting in, they're good seats, which means they're not cheap. If I'm going to go to a game and sit in those seats, I am going to be of sound mind and body. Because I'm not going to feel like wake up the next day. I have no idea what happened in the game. There is no way that guy has any idea what happened in the game. He probably saw that Jack Eichel scored a goal in overtime. He's probably happy that Vegas has officially clinched, but I don't think he was cognizant of it. And I know he left before Eichel scored. That blows my mind. You want to have a beverage, you want to have a something to take the edge off, to have a good time. I'm not judging you. Be responsible about it in terms of your transportation. But like, for some people, it makes the experience better to be so wasted. There's no way you even know what's going on. I can't comprehend that. I really can't. Not when tickets are as expensive as they are. I don't know, maybe he got them for free, or maybe he's absolutely loaded in more ways than one. And it's just another Saturday for him. But for me, I want to know and remember what happened. In fact, I remember vividly what happened in that hockey game, and I will tell you next. Hello there. Welcome in. Great to have you, whether you're listening to the show on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, or whether you're watching the show anywhere you scroll at 740 KVOR and at Extra Sports 1300. If you'd like to take your participation to the next level, you can comment on the live stream, or you could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Perhaps you have a thought or two on the three stories that are driving the show. All right, we start on the hardwood for story number one.
Rebound poked around, grabbed by Castle, back over to Vassell. Jumper won't go. Rebound Vassell, put back Fox 3. That one won't go. Rebound tipped out, grabbed by Scrather. He's got a breakaway. 2 hands. And the Nuggets now lead it by 10.
Cause on the call, Altitude Sports, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. It all worked out in the end for the Denver Nuggets as they beat both the Thunder and the Spurs shorthanded to clinch the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. But before you go praising David Adelman too much, just know that the Spurs did the very same thing against the Nuggets Sunday that the Nuggets did against them 2 years prior. The Spurs put out their best team, save for Wemby, against the Nuggets G League team and Nikola Jokic for a half and lost that game. At one point, gave up a 22-0 run in that game. As you heard, couldn't make anything down the stretch of the game. The Spurs blew it. They wanted to win that game. Why? Because it would put Denver on the same side of the bracket as OKC, which is precisely why the Denver Nuggets should have. I know the result in retrospect, it's hard for me to say this. Going into the weekend, I thought David Adelman had it all wrong. I thought it was important for the Denver Nuggets to win. Obviously, don't play Nikola Jokic 45 minutes and Aaron Gordon and all that. There's a balance here. There's a happy medium. But there would have been real consequences for the Denver Nuggets if they would have fallen from the 3 seed. Because no team that has been a 4 seed or worse in the playoffs has won an NBA title in the last 30 years of the National Basketball Association. And I think the Nuggets are really good. If I'm David Adelman, I don't take that chance that I'm unable to buck 30 years of history. And there's a practical reason for this, right? It's how long you get home court. It's getting the better matchups. You're getting the worst teams the higher the seed you are. I understand there's a history with Minnesota, and there's a thought that maybe they're the more difficult the matchup. But over the course of the season, the Nuggets fared just as well against Minnesota as they did Houston. And 82 games says Houston's better than Minnesota. So I thought David Adelman had it all wrong. And thankfully, OKC's will to avoid the Denver Nuggets in round 2 was greater than the Nuggets' will to avoid Oklahoma City in round 2. And then Sunday, it just became whether the Nuggets would be the 3rd seed or the 4th seed. And on paper, they should have been the 4th seed. San Antonio put out a better team. And they blew it, just like the Nuggets did a couple years ago when they went into San Antonio. They played their best players. San Antonio didn't care. Nuggets blew that game, and their penalty was what? Minnesota in the 2nd round. This will come back to bite San Antonio because I believe Denver is going to see them in round 2. And I think Denver's going to beat them. And they'll be looking at game 82 as we have the last couple years that one that happened in San Antonio 2 years ago, looking at it and saying they blew it. But it worked out for the Denver Nuggets. They get the 3 seed, and just something feels right about this path, doesn't it? You get your old friends from Minneapolis, Tim Connolly, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert. I've got 47, brother. All of that kind of stuff. All those memories come rushing back. Rivalry. And then you get past that, maybe the ghosts of Christmas past, I suppose, getting past Minnesota once and for all. We're done with this. We move on. The debate all season, San Antonio or Denver, who's the best equipped? Who's the biggest threat? Who's the next best team outside of OKC? Well, we're going to get 7 games to find out. And then the natural evolution, progression is probably the better word of the playoffs. And it's Denver or San Antonio and OKC in the Western Conference Finals with a trip to the NBA Finals on the line. Something just feels right about all of this. And I think it does set up as well as you could expect for the Denver Nuggets. Because as David Adelman said yesterday, the West is going to be crazy. I do not expect the Nuggets to have an easy time. OKC is probably the only team that's going to have an easy go of it early. I think everyone else is going to have their hands full to some degree. So it's not to say that the Nuggets are going to waltz to the Western Conference Finals, far from it, but the road that they're taking, it feels right, and it is better than if they would have fell to the 5 seed, which is what David Adelman seemed like he was okay with when Friday rolled around. Now, from one team that had still some to play for this weekend to one that had nothing to play for and kind of looked that way. Here's story number 2.
Cavs have to hustle back here. Eichel with Stone. Eichel holding. Eichel shooting. He scores. Jack Eichel beats Mackenzie Blackwood. Vegas gets the extra 2 points. And they, for sure now, are headed to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Final score, Golden Knights 3 and the Avs 2.
Connor McGahee, as heard on Altitude Sports and here on Extra Sports 1300. I wouldn't say that the Avs played terribly on Saturday, but they were not the Avs that you have seen for most of this season. It just looked like they could not meet the desperation level, the want to that Vegas had. And it's natural. They clinched everything. Yet they, by the way, Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Marty Necas all played. Devon Taves played. So no load management for the Avs. But they just look like they weren't matching the energy of Vegas. But this doesn't impact the Avalanche in the standings, and it meant everything to Vegas. So fair play to them for playing like it. I didn't think anything of it as far as the Avs are concerned, because even with that disparity and want to, Avs still basically played him to a stalemate. The game went into overtime. I came away saying, like, maybe this Torts thing is going to work. I came away pretty impressed with a lot of what I saw from Vegas and what I have been seeing from Vegas. It looks like this Vegas way of doing things, to introduce stress in a very particular spot, head coach, to bring out the best of everybody, seems like it's working. And maybe maybe we're going to see Avs Vegas in the Western Conference Final. Tonight will be a good test of that, because the Avs, with similar stakes, are now on the road taking on Edmonton. So I'll compare and contrast and get back to you tomorrow. But Avs lose one in overtime. If you care about, where they are in terms of their points in Avalanche history, they did pick up a point in that game, but just couldn't muster what Vegas was able to on Saturday. Again, Avs back at it tonight against Edmonton, 7:30 on Extra Sports 1300. We go to another hockey team for story number 3 that absolutely could muster everything they needed to once again bring a national championship home.
Kicks out to play it at the end boards, throws it up the wall with one last effort. It's over. It's a Denver dynasty. Denver rallies to win it 2-1. And the Pioneers with their 3rd championship in 5 seasons.
Westwood won on the call. You heard that on Extra Sports 1300. 11 total titles for Denver. But as we know, it's a different time in college sports than it was when Jim Montgomery or George Gwozdecky was coaching the Pioneers. And David Carl said something after the game that just rang very true to me. A way that Denver and the NCHC in total can counteract, this influx of money into the Big Ten. Like, there's so much money going into the Big Ten right now. And a lot of the comparisons, NCHC versus Big Ten. I think whatever disparity there is in money can be made up for in prioritization or caring or commitment. And what I mean by that is Denver is no more committed to anything than they are hockey. The schools that comprise the NCHC are all in on hockey. Maybe they don't have the money that Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State do to throw around. But I got to imagine when junior players from Canada, when high school players or juniors from America come into a DU, a CC, a Western Michigan, a Minnesota Duluth, St. Cloud, they go, wow, this is the biggest deal. Maybe it's a little bit of a vanity play. I am the biggest deal. How good you walk onto those campuses and you listen to these coaches and see how committed they are to the sport of hockey in a way that the Big Ten isn't. They can't be. There's something to be said for how a school like DU and a conference like the NCHC, this is their thing. And I think in this brave new world of college athletics, that still has to mean something, that you are the priority. If you play hockey at Denver, at Colorado College, at Duluth, at Western Michigan, you play hockey in the NCHC, you are the top priority when it comes to sports. We only care about you. This is a big deal. This is the biggest deal. If you go to Michigan, if you go to Michigan State, if you go to Wisconsin, it's not the same. They may hand you a bigger check, but are they committing to you beyond that in the way that you can be committed to in the NCHC? I just don't think so. And I think that's a very powerful message that David Carl, Chris Mayotte, and these other coaches can deliver to athletes who are looking to play for their program. And I think it's why here in the early days of NIL and the transfer portal that DU's still winning. And DU's winning 3 of the last 5 national titles. It's because of their commitment to the sport, to that program. And it's got to ring true with the players that they bring in. And they keep them, right? They keep them and they grow them as players from one year to the next. Not surprised whatsoever that DU won on Saturday, but that doesn't make it any less of an amazing accomplishment. So I don't I keep bringing up the Wes Mantu thing. With every fiber of my being, I pure straight hate you, but dang it, do I respect you. Denver Pioneers, once again, national champions in college hockey. 719-24-7-1313. Your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Another big event over the weekend was the Masters, and what a wild ride that is. But then again, always is when you're dealing with Rory McIlroy. Tax day is coming up Wednesday, but don't stress. Enter the Uncle Sam's giveaway for a chance to win $5,000 to bail you out. To enter this national contest, head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. It's the Uncle Sam's giveaway, sponsored locally by Kruger Brothers Construction. Plan now, build stress-free. So what I thought going into Saturday is Rory just going to – we waited so long for Rory McIlroy to win a green jacket, and now he's just going to win all of them in perpetuity. And that after Saturday was very much in doubt. But I think, and all the conversation today is about, did Rory get an unfair advantage because he was practicing at Augusta the weeks leading up to it? And a lot of good that did him on Saturday. Like, I feel like that's an easy thing to debate. He's not the most experienced golfer at Augusta in the field. That opportunity was afforded to other golfers, I'm sure. I didn't come away with the thought on Sunday that Rory pulled that out because he had practiced the 2 weeks leading up to the Masters at Augusta National. I just didn't feel that way. And maybe some of the golfers in the field might disagree with my premise, but I came away saying, what an unbelievable bounce back by Rory. Right? Like, I can't give him, like, he was the same guy that was objectively terrible on Saturday. But it's like, if you look at it like a 4-quarter game, like, you're allowed to have, how many teams have a really good first half and then the third quarter rolls around, they nosedive only to be able to, pull it out in the end in the fourth quarter? Broncos, Nuggets on many of an occasion. Like, how informal poll here, or you just ask yourself this question. Did you think that Rory was going to win after Saturday? Maybe you did. I don't know that a lot of people did. Now, I'll tell you why I still thought Rory was going to win. Again, it has nothing to do with he practiced the weeks leading up to the Masters at Augusta. The way he closed out the third round made me feel like he was going to find a way on Sunday. Because Saturday was going terribly and Cam Young was phenomenal. But then Rory, the last 3 holes in the third round, he was able to get under control and finish with at least a share of the lead. And I listened to Rory talk after his round. And he said, the thing I have to remind myself is that I still am tied for the best score that anyone has put up here through 3 rounds. And I wonder if I believe that was the thing that set up his ability to come back on Sunday. And look, he even had to do it again, right? And golf goes this way, right? Unless you're Tiger, you're not, prime Tiger, you're not going to put up 18 holes or Scotty Scheffler, I suppose. It was a single bogey the whole round. But you're not going to look back at a round and go, every hole was great. That's what we love about this infuriating game. You have to come back from an awful hole. Rory had to do it again on the front 9. right? He settled himself right before the turn. And then I thought he was very good for the most part on the back nine. But I really thought the way that he calmed down and was able to finish out his third round to at least be able to tell himself, because one Masters does not completely, it may change the narrative around Rory. I don't think it rewires his memory, the memory part of his brain. Okay. How much do you think Rory McIlroy started thinking about the collapses at the Masters that he has had, or the collapse that he has had at the Masters versus him winning last year? Golf is, again, another reason why we hate the sport, but we love it. There are few things that test your mental strength than golf. And if Rory does not, let's say he ends his round with a couple of bogeys or just like one really bad hole on 17 or 18, and he cannot tell himself that he's still tied for the lead, that he's still put up, along with Cam Young, the best 3 days that anybody has put up at the tournament, how that would have impacted him the next day. I think it would have. And I think if Rory doesn't finish the third round the way he does, and then to a lesser extent on Sunday, if he doesn't finish off the front nine the way he did after a couple of really rough holes, I mean, look at Scheffler's, everyone's looking at Scheffler's putt that nearly went down. The guy, Rory, ended up winning by a stroke. I think there are a lot of moments, as there are in any golf tournament, where you look back and say, man, that was a big putt he made, or that was a big approach shot, him out of the sand on that hole, that drive. And the thing is with Rory, to kind of feed into the idea that if he completely falls off the top spot, now does he start looking at his driver and going, man, this thing has been terrible? Because his driving accuracy was quite poor throughout the entire tournament. You know, you get so beholden to the last thing that you see, right? In a tournament, and again, a tournament could be like a 4-quarter basketball game or a 4-quarter football game. We get so beholden to how it ends that sometimes the most pivotal moment happened in the previous quarter or in the first half. I think the way that Rory finished off round 3 was massive. Now, I can't say that I was, running to my sports betting app of choice and hammering Rory on Sunday, but I felt like I thought he was going to win. But man, could Sunday have set up any better with the way Saturday went down? And I talked about it going into the Masters. There wasn't as much, golf does very, especially when you talk about it casually amongst the masses, there are a few storylines that you can always go back to. That if you're not super into golf, you could still have a conversation with somebody. And it's Tiger, and at Augusta, it was Rory. Right? Even you couldn't bring Phil into the conversation. Like these storylines that maybe lazily we fall into every single year. Is Tiger going to play? Is this going to be the year for Rory? We didn't have those. So I felt like this Masters didn't have as much juice going into it. But I also didn't think that it meant that it was going to be a bad weekend of golf. And then the first 2 rounds happened. I'm like, this is going to be a bad weekend of golf. And then the third round comes around, and it, even with Rory finishing out the way he did, You had Cam Young, you had him, you had Sky Scheffler, you had Justin Rose in the mix. I mean, you got Sunday was, yeah, I'm getting up and I'm locking in. I know naps are quite popular Sunday at Augusta. Not for me. I wanted to see almost as many of those 18 from those guys as I could. Turned out to be a phenomenal Masters weekend. But Rory back to back now. It's him, it's Faldo, it's Tiger, and it's Jack. And I don't know. Maybe the conversation should happen. Where is Rory all time? I feel like he is, and maybe it's an unfair standard, but he is so that list I just mentioned of back-to-back Masters champions, like he is so, to me, so far behind Tiger and Jack. Like he is not. I don't think Rory is a Mount Rushmore type golfer at this point. I think he's great, and getting the Masters and now having back-to-back. I mean, you want to talk about how unfair it is to, draw conclusions about somebody's career in the NFL or the NBA before it's over. How about golf? Like Rory's got a long way to go. I'm not saying he can't start to get into some of those conversations, but I look at Rory, as difficult as it is to win majors, and it's a little bit of a what if with him. Where he started, where we thought his career was going to go, and then it didn't. And now it's like back-to-back wins at Augusta. It's always entertaining. I'll say that about Rory. Never a dull moment if you're watching Rory McIlroy at a major. Sunday was fun. It was good. And congrats to Rory. I'm not anti-Rory. I don't even know that I kind of think that the best story is Rory winning, right? Especially the way he won. That was good. That was some good golf. Not so much from Rory on Saturday, but I'm just saying overall from many golfers. And man, Scotty was... I couldn't believe it. Amanda Balionis asked him after he just went bogey free for 2 days, what was missing? Something was missing. The guy lost by 1. That was tough. Scheffler was being asked a few of those types of questions over the weekend. Like, my goodness, are our standards for Scotty Scheffler through the roof? I guess Justin Rose was a sentimental favorite from some. But that was some good Masters over the weekend. Take your thoughts on it. 719-24-7. 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. After a week away from competition, Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC is back in full force this week with not one but two matches at Widener Field this week. First one tomorrow night, U.S. Open Cup against MLS club Sporting Kansas City, trying to win a match like that for the first time in club history. That will be at 6. Fast forward to Saturday, 3 o'clock. Back in USL Championship play against Monterey Bay FC. It's après ski night. And you don't even have to wait till the night because, again, kickoff is at 3. But if you want to be there for both matches, and why wouldn't you be? I'm planning on being there for both. Switchbacksfc.com is where you get your tickets. And I will be doing this show from Widener Field tomorrow in advance of tomorrow night's big time tilt between Switchbacks FC and Sporting Kansas City. Looking forward to it. I hope to see you out there. This text coming in, DU winning the national championship. And, you know, what I think the NCHC and DU have that maybe makes up for the limitless budget that these Big Ten teams have is their commitment to the sport of hockey. Commitment to development, commitment to, you know, putting butts in the seats, commitment to this being the biggest deal to them. And I think that still means something. And yes, you have phenomenal coaches in the NCHC, but I think the commitment to the sport is not what you get in the Big Ten. Because it just can't be. I'm not trying to, you know, destroy the Big Ten. Like, they're kind of ruling college sports right now, if you haven't noticed. Michigan wins men's basketball title. UCLA wins women's basketball championship. Indiana wins football. They had, you know, Michigan in the semifinal against DU. They had Wisconsin in the final against DU. Like, the Big Ten is kind of owning this new world of college athletics, and I grant them that. But they can't commit to hockey in the way DU and some of these NCHC schools can, and the conference as a whole. And I think that matters. And I think it's why I don't think the NCHC is going to fall off too much over the next few years. But there is another conference in America that thinks very highly of themselves, and that is, to Albert's point on the text line, the NCHC does make hockey priority number one, but so does Hockey East. The NCHC builds winning teams. Hockey East builds NHL careers. When Hockey East decides to build winning teams, they will challenge the NCHC in a way the Big Ten can't. And I think you're right about that. I think this year's a tough year. Look at the USCHO poll that just came out today. Lion CHC, a lot of Big Ten. Even if you look at the mock draft for the NHL coming up, in addition to obviously overseas players and Canadian junior players, a lot of NCHC, couple Big Ten, obviously with Gavin McKenna, not a lot of Hockey East. But this happens. You know, I'm not saying anything negative about Hockey East. This is a tough year for Hockey East, but I agree with you. It does seem like their whole motto or what their selling point is, we'll get you to the NHL. And probably the numbers, I haven't looked, but probably the numbers show that Hockey East is the best at sending guys to the NHL. But that doesn't, it's kind of the same as the one and dones. The one and dones versus the the teams that keep guys around in the NCAA basketball tournament, right? Are you just, for years, Coach Calipari, focused on, I want to get guys to the NBA, and that's how I will accumulate talent. And sometimes he was, criticized for that in Kentucky because they wanted to win national titles more than anything else. And then the problem became other teams started to adopt his strategy, and he was not cornering the market anymore on these one and dones. It's kind of the same thing with Hockey East. You want to put guys in the NHL, and that's great. And that means they're talented, and that means you could compete. But there's a balance here. And right now, the NCHC is striking it better than Hockey East is. They're putting guys in the NHL, and they're also winning national titles. And I think but it's the second thing that is more the selling point of the NCHC. And I think, to your point, Albert, I think Hockey East needs to calibrate a little bit and balance that out a little bit more. And then I'm 100% with you, I think. And it, not like Hockey East has been in shambles or anything like that, but it's the same thing. Are you committing to this sport? Are you committing to this sport at your institution? And I still think that goes a long way. As much as we want to, say that money is ruining college athletics, I do still think there are 18 to 23-year-olds, men and women in this country, that do still care about getting the best experience possible and caring about winning and caring about going somewhere that doesn't just cut them the biggest check, but is offering them a real chance to grow as athletes. I think they still exist. And a lot of them apparently in hockey go to DU. That's what we found out over the weekend. But I like Hockey East. I do. I do. And I think NCHC is certainly ahead of them right now, though. This from the 719. I thought Young was playing great golf Saturday. Going into Sunday, I thought he had a legitimate shot, but he faded. McIlroy faded, but he pulled it back out. I thought it was ironic that Young and McIlroy on the 18th were both in the trees on opposite sides of the fairway. Oh, the crazy game of golf. Very entertaining, though. Really enjoyed it. And I did, too. And I think I think that goes to something that was working in Rory's favor that wasn't, he practiced a lot at Augusta leading up to the tournament. I think you can ask, the only person that was going to be viewed as choking was Rory. Right? Which probably, again, put more on his shoulders and made it more impressive that he was able to end up winning the tournament anyway. Like, I don't know that a lot of people are talking about Cam Young choking. I think it's looked more like, and maybe it's semantics, but like Rory has been through the fire repeatedly on the major stage. Cam Young hasn't. And golfing with Rory, we used to talk about it all the time with Tiger, like being in the same group as Tiger, like that's a whole different game that you got to play because you got that guy standing right next to you, alternating shots with you, basically. That's a lot to deal with. I wonder if Cam Young with Rory in tow and Rory being more battle tested led to the ultimate separation between the two. I think there's a fine line between choking and fading. I think Cam Young faded on Sunday because we have to be fair. He was brilliant on Saturday. Were we thinking much about him Thursday and Friday? Was it fading? Did he regress to the mean on Sunday? Or did he choke, or did he buckle under the weight of going head to head with Rory for 18? I think he just kind of couldn't sustain what he did on Saturday. And I don't know that has to be Rory centric. Just could be him, because he was so good on Saturday that it was a little bit of an outlier from what he was the other 3 days of the tournament. But it was great. And I thought going into the weekend, I'm driving up to the Avs game and I'm listening and I'm like, what is happening to Rory? I didn't see it. I didn't see what was happening to him on Saturday. And it's just another update. He's in the trees. He's in the Amen corner, just ate him alive on Saturday. I woke up on Saturday. I'm like, I'm going to watch the Masters because it's the Masters. Of course I am. But how engaged am I going to be in this thing the rest of the way? And then as I'm listening to it driving up on Saturday, I'm like, yep, I'm going to be locked in on Sunday. That's for sure. I'm glad I was. It was good. Good golf. Let's see what else I need to get to. A developing story out of the NBA. Luka is set to return from Spain tomorrow. And the Lakers are going to reevaluate him. So it goes without saying, no Luka, Lakers are done in round one. Credit to LeBron for the way he's played down the stretch. There's no way he can sustain that for 7 games against the Houston Rockets. If he gets Luka, even if Austin Reeves doesn't play, with Luka, there's a chance. So we'll see where that goes. I wouldn't take Houston or LA over OKC, but somebody's got to play him. So we'll see what happens with Luka. This kind of funny out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. First big get for Michael Malone as the head coach of North Carolina. Virginia Tech transfer Nicholas Avdalis. Neoklis. Neoklis? I mean, can you get any closer? I mean, the joke just writes itself. The first guy that Michael Malone gets committed is a guy that I know he's Greek. I can tell he's Greek by his name, but could you be a little bit closer to Nicola? Thought that was funny. But that's the first get. Transfer from Virginia Tech. 12 points, 3 rebounds, 4.5 assists last year. I mean, we all said he'd be looking for his Nikola Jokic. Neoklis is what he ended up with. And then how about this for a dynamic? They say that it's never good to be in a relationship with your coworker, but I got to say, you got to give a little bit of leniency to someone who didn't have a choice. What I mean by this, AZ Fudd just became the top pick in the WNBA draft. She is going to Dallas. And I believe, I'm not up on this, but I believe she's dating current Dallas Wings player Paige Beckers. Obviously, they were teammates at UConn. A dynamic that we don't see a lot in professional sport, do we? But it's going to play itself out in the WNBA if my details on the relationships are. I'm not usually up on these things, but I seem to remember that was the case with them. Avs and Oilers tonight, 7:30, Extra Sports 1300. I'll talk to you tomorrow from Widener Field. Enjoy your evening, whatever you may be doing with it.